What up, Kinfolk Nation?
What it do?
We are so excited, man. Good morning to y'all. We got a real special show today. Got a special guest in studio. We'll to that in a minute and introduce him. But we want to go ahead and get it rolling with the word of the day. How y'all fellas doing this morning?
Good, brother.
Good.
Man, blessed. Feeling blessed, bro.
All right, well, cool, man. So the word of the day this morning is from Proverbs chapter 19, verse 17. And it says, if you help the poor, you are lending to the Lord, and he will repay you. And man, we have been very consistent around this message or this nugget around God's perspective and priority as it relates to what we should do and who we should target our help and efforts towards. I think this put it in a little different context for me, just because as you think of God, our Father in heaven and his abundance of riches, you think about why would he indebt himself for anything? And so when you think about what he told us to do, which is help the poor, now that can be a broad range of things, resources, information, education, exposure that lifts up this specific group. But he said, if you help the poor, which is one part of it, you are lending to God. So God takes that personally. He takes pride in that, and then he enters into a business transaction with you because of that. That's a business deal. And so again, there was no qualification on the you, meaning it didn't say you that don't drink, that don't smoke, that don't do this and that. It just says, if you help the poor, you are lending to the Lord. And so something has to be pricked in your heart to make you even want to help the poor. So I do believe there's a fundamental connection there to him and what his priorities are. But again, there is no religious context to this person that is helping the poor and in turn entering to a business contract with the Lord. And so as you think about it, I'll just be real brief in my comments, man. Like, we're not set up and designed to lend to the poor. He didn't say if you lend to the poor, you're lending to the Lord. We're not designed to go take more from them or put them in a bigger hole than they're currently in. So when you think about payday loans and anything that are designed to lend to the poor, that is not a principle that God shares as far as how do you fund them? How do you help them? How do you raise them up? It's giving, it's helping, it's education. It is all these different things that are resources that we provide. And then he pays us back. And so if you think about it in that light, I was in banking for years, man. Like, if you came in and you had bad credit and bad income and you just getting started, man, like, we want to do something, but we ain't about to do it. You got to go get a guarantor. You got to go get a cosigner, somebody who is stronger than you to give that bank confidence that they will or you will repay them back. And so that's where God is inserting himself into this transaction as the guarantor. I guarantee that I will pay you back. And for him, there is no credit scale in the world that can accurately measure his credit worthiness. He is beyond credit worthiness. He is the owner of all things. So in that, we should have full confidence that if we do this, if we take him up on this challenge, that he will certainly pay us back. And I think that's the incentive that he's used to get to his people so that we create this muscle memory of helping the poor. So God said it. Jesus has said it. Moses said it. David said it. Solomon said it. Paul said it. All the people that we generally listen to about what God's word is has designated the poor as who we should be helping. So I just wanted to say, man, that was a fire nugget. One of the things that I'll leave it with is that as we think about our modern day messaging system, and this is Solomon generally when we're talking about Proverbs, the richest, wisest man on earth and in the history of earth at this point. This is essentially his Twitter feed. These are not long stories. These are not long parables. These are like one-liner quotables that are just full of insight, full of wisdom, full of instruction of how we should do this life thing. And nowadays we give platforms to everybody. But specifically, he had the biggest platform back in the day, and he used his platform to display and give us wisdom nuggets. So I just really thought that was pretty cool how he got it in bite-sized nuggets. And if you read throughout this chapter, man, there's so many little quotables that you could take away that help us in life. One of my favorites is, it says a father can give sons houses and inheritance, but only the Lord can give you an understanding wife.
Facts.
So I want to thank God right now for giving me an understanding wife, because I know there's no amount of money in the world that can calm down the nerves of somebody who does not have that in place. So I appreciate it. I know y'all appreciate y'all's, fellas. But anyway, I just want to say that. I'm going to turn it over to my brothers, let y'all kind of chop it up. What you get out of this message, man? What you got?
That's hard, man. We got the guests in the building, man. I'm all stretched up and ready to go. But Coop, G. Reed, y'all want to jump in that thing, or y'all want me to get in there and get in motion?
Go ahead. We'll open the door to you, Coop, if you want to hop in, man. You're the special guest of honor.
Yeah, cool. I ain't want to jump in too soon. It's just like coming to somebody's house. You go straight to the fridge. Like, man, hold on. Look, we got to invite you there.
Yeah,
You're from the country, man. You eat first, man. Guess you eat first around this thing.
You can't vote. Do your
That's
thing.
right. That's right. And I appreciate that context too, see, because whenever you sent over the verse, I read it, and the first thing I thought about was, what else is he talking about in this chapter? Because, you know, I haven't been able to walk through the Bible in a you know, to be able to complete it, right? And so, of course, even throughout life, some verses you may have read is going to seem new, but this is fresh and new to me, right? And so just reading it at the face value and also considering the work that we're doing in the community, it was definitely very soothing, for sure. Like, okay, you know, there's a ROI for this, right? That's already embedded in the script. But also at the same time, when you think about the term poor, of course, there is a condition, right, that reflects poor behaviors, but there's also a poor mindset, right? And that was the thing that I thought about as well, is that, you know, in two ways we'll be able to address it. And I think is what you were talking about, see, is less of that transactional way to where you lend to the poor, right? It's more so in a way in which help may be in the form of immediate assistance, right, to be able to speak or sow whatever seed that is needed for them to, you know, take the initiative. But there's also the renewal of the mind that is in that same space. And so just as you mentioned, I naturally zoomed out and was just like, all right, what else are we talking about here? And literally to your point, I'm like, bro, I'm gonna have to spend a little bit more time here, because it was just these one-liners that just you could just sit back and, you know, nod your head. The second point I'll make is I was actually listening to something this morning. It was right in line. Shout out Dr. Miles Monroe. And he was talking about management and a lot of our aspirations, especially those that may not have resources, like individuals that could be poor. We look for miracles in the situation. But ultimately what it boils down to is what's laid out in Genesis is like, you know, we ain't gonna rain on this thing. Ain't nobody there to manage it, right? And so just even on the front end of the script, that he is not going to provide the resources if you haven't managed what you already had. And I think in the process of helping the poor, there's that principle of management that we have to bring to light, which of course aligns with stewardship. So that's my immediate takeaway.
That's hard, man.
That's fire.
What up, Johnny Ray?
Yep.
How you feeling?
Well, I definitely thought it was on point, as you said, see. And Isaac made a great point of, you know, what is poor? How do you define poor? Because we walk around people on the street, or it may be your brother who's poor mentally that needs some help. Or maybe it's just some advice that you're giving. I know I've struggled with this. I know I had a conversation here recently with C about it, of feeling the obligation to give, specifically maybe a family member who is in a bad situation, what is quote unquote poor. Even though we know they have the resources, the health, the strength to go out and do, their financial situation has them in what we would consider as poor. And every time you get a call, do you respond to that and give to them? Is that me doing my due diligence and lending to God, giving a family member $50 this week and then $50 next month and then another $50 next month? Or is that just a pattern of enablement that I'm providing? C said something that was so dope that really changed my perspective is, when you give somebody some money, whether it's the guy on the street or my brother, who are they thanking for that? Are they thanking Gary, or are they thanking God for that money? And that changed my whole perspective, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, thank you, G. Oh, you such a blessing. But they ain't even prayed or said, thank you, God, or even asked God for anything. So just trying to be mindful of that. I know for myself, and conscious of, first off, not worrying about what their situation is when you're helping someone, but also determining, distinguishing, is this something that God spoke to me to do? to help this person, or is this something I feel in my heart and obligated to do because I have $20 and my brother wants $20? So that the verse was on point and on time when he sent it, because I was struggling with something internally myself with giving, and that helped me out. So I know my thought of, who are you thanking for? I know I thank God every morning, every night for the blessings that he sent our way. If I give someone some money, who are they thinking? Is what I left with that.
Man, it's so dope. Y'all got me fired up this morning, man. I mean, just the fellowship is just cool, but I appreciate the opportunity to kind of back clean up, man, try to land the plane on this thing if I can. In this church in the streets with my kinfolk, man. I personally enjoy Proverbs, man, because it has so many one-liners, as Coop alluded to, as C talked about, and it makes life really practical, man, for me. I encourage all the listeners to read this chapter, man, if you can, in the Bible in its entirety, because it's loaded with wisdom, but Proverbs in itself is very, very practical, man. It puts things down on the ground where the goat can get it, if you feel me. You know, so for me, this specific verse, it puts into context the call to action to help those less fortunate. You feel me? Now, I don't necessarily think that relates and refers to earthly wealth, right? Because we talk about the term lend in this verse, and the term lend implies that God will repay you, is where I'm going with this, for your generosity to the poor. And so what I was saying earlier was that doesn't necessarily refer to earthly wealth. He's going to pay you in spiritual blessings that can empower you, that can enrich you, that can increase you when you got this pressure on you that society will put on you, right? So that's kind of what spoke to me in the verse, man. I think God's will is to work through humans on the earth, to work through us. You know, he's blessed us tremendously so we can be a blessing to other people. You feel me? So let me do the math on this right quick. We got Coop in the studio. He's a subject matter expert in terms of the area of finances. We kind of got into that a little bit, so I'm going to do a temperature check, Coop. Let's see, you chime in too, man. I'm going to ask y'all a question. Where else can you find a risk-free investment with the rate of return that pays guaranteed dividends?
Not anywhere. There's no word such as guarantee, even though they put it in certain documents. In my career in banking and financial things, there is no guarantee other than the fact that you guaranteed to get that invoice if you borrow money. They're going to send you a bill for it.
Yeah.
That's right. It's actually illegal to have the term guarantee and investment in the same sentence. Because there's no way to be able to anticipate or forecast something you have no control over, especially another business entity. And, so that is just even hearing it together, I got scared. I thought compliance was about to come around the corner. You know?
And that's where we going with it, right? So that's an earthly perspective as it relates to business. But what this verse refers to is lending to the poor does just that. It's a fully secure investment that yields a variety of large profits. Helping the poor is lending to the Lord, and he will repay you with compound interest and many blessings. You dig? That's church in the streets, man. We gonna slide, bro. We got a guest.
Hey, I just got one question on that, man. Did they say it's a guarantee your wife would be understanding?
No, it says that only the
Lord can gonna guarantee
that. You go in the club and just snatch you one. That don't necessarily mean God gave it to you, even though He could. So when you're not understanding, you can point back to this verse and say, "Oh, Lord, did you give me this, or did I go get this?"
For sure.
Can you return it? Most importantly, how do you return it?
I don't think we want to walk down that road. We are all happily married men on this. Let's get moving.
You can't go out there and do something on your own and ask God to get you out of it. So, that's where the consultation and the relationship on the front end comes into play, Kinfolk. So, good stuff, folks.
Listen, one thing, because me and Johnny Ray's conversation was so good that morning. One other thing I want to say is that God is concerned with the condition of our heart when we give. So it doesn't matter if you're giving to the poor, or if you're giving to a church, or you're giving to the streets. Like, if you are doing it and you really don't want to do it, it does not help you. That is not countable for him. And so he's trying to get us into a point to where we do understand his principles, that we are cheerful, willing givers. And that's where it really comes down to. So again, there is obligation of things that we should not even be doing. But this in Proverbs, it did say, hey, if you don't make a person with a hot temper pay the price, you're likely to have to rescue them again. And what it's saying is you cannot rescue people from bad decisions and think they won't do it again. So again, as it relates to that person that's continuously coming back to you as their source, asking you for money, you're only perpetuating that by doing it because it's guaranteed that they're going to come back again, which we have experienced. So I just wanted to wrap that up, man. Good word, fellas. We can go ahead and transition, Ken. Let's get it.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. Again, that church in the street was fire, bro. So I appreciate it, man. So listen up, Kinfolk community. We juiced up today, man. As we alluded to earlier, we got a special guest joining us in the studio today. He's a friend. He's a brother. He Kinfolk. We may not be blood, but we family. You dig? So y'all help me in welcoming Mr. Isaac Cooper to the platform, to the Kinfolk Lounge. And Coop, man, you want to take a minute, introduce yourself, and just tell the community about all the motion you got going on, man, with IMC Consulting.
Cool, man. Cool. And of course, shout out to the platform y'all built. I've been an active listener and really appreciative of just breaking down this word and the sequence that you established, you know, getting into the word and then getting into some topics because, you know, oftentimes we forget how to start the day. And what I appreciate about even prior to knowing that we're going to have a word of the day, I got to get in the word. Right. And so it flexed the muscle that sometimes you let the world have a little bit more authority over in regards of I woke up and just allowing that control of movement. So I appreciate that accountability. But real quick, I'm so Jamaican by blood, Floridian by birth. What brought me to Birmingham was a football. Yeah, you done know, Sir Rasta. Respect. That's right. What brought me to Birmingham was a football scholarship to Sanford, and just a very consistent story of exposure, right? And so I saw athletes, I saw entrepreneurs that didn't pay taxes in my backyard, I saw the rapper making money, and so thank God there was enough consistency with sports to where I was able to get a college scholarship because I wasn't thinking about college in regards of education. It was more of I'm finna go to the league, and this is just a part of the process, right? Definitely got to shout out, rest in peace, Pat Sullivan, because that was actually the only reason why I came to Sanford. I remember telling him on my visit, I'm like, yeah, coach, all this is cool, but y'all stadium a little too small for me, brother. So I'm going to keep it moving. But throughout all of that, you know, my suite mate, my roommate got drafted, went 5th round. Like we all had at least one big D1 offer. And so, you know, we were some dogs. I felt like we changed the landscape, as you can see, with the new stadium and things of that nature. So I got a suite mate that's still in the league. It's going on 8 years. Roommate got drafted 5th round. And then since then, we've had a couple of DBs go out pretty early on, 2nd round as well. But unfortunately, sports ended before I wanted it to. And over time, I started to acknowledge some of the life experiences that really shape really what we're doing today around money. I've always been comfortable with numbers, really by force. Because again, being a Jamaican, my mom didn't necessarily trust everyone, especially at Walmart, right? And so when it pertained to getting that change, it was just like, yo, you know, and what I did, what I had to do is that, you know, with me being born in Florida, but even though my parents are 100% Jamaican, I grew up there. So I'm like, that's Miss Sharon. I go to school with her son, or that's so-and-so. But again, my mom didn't care about none of that. So to try to avoid the embarrassment, I would calculate the change in my head. So if it was $14.36, I'll say, Mom, it's $5.64, right? Or excuse me, $6.64. They'll hit change due. I'll be like, okay, I got it right. Again, comfortable with numbers, but that's just me getting out of the situation. All right, I get into high school. Teacher, I said her name multiple times on podcast, Stephanie Thepper. She was super tough. And she taught pre-cal, tough. And she's still tough. I tell her to this day. And Deej, you know what time it is. But yeah, man, look. But it pushed me to say, I want to take pre-cal. Of course, you're in high school. You think you got a shot with everybody. Like, man, I'm that dude. What you mean? Like, you ain't met me yet, right? And so I get into pre-cal. I did well enough to go to AP Calculus because she taught that the 12th grade. And all this is going to connect. So I take AP Calculus. I get a D in the class. I wasn't doing no homework. But at the end of the year, you got to take the AP exam. And she's like, look, you know, one of those teachers where it's like a 99% pass rate for folks that take her class. If you go around the classroom, all right, Johnny, you're going to do well. So-and-so, you're going to do well. Isaac, just try your best. And I was like, hold up, so I studied. I applied myself for a month, and I ended up making a 4 on the exam, and I was one question away from making a 5, which is the highest. Again, another confirmation that I'm good with numbers, but at the end of the day, all that was cool. I'm like, I'm finna go play football, right? So get to Sanford, play ball, end up getting into the finance major. I'll fast forward to just through the football experience and just get to the point of I'm injured. I get through my senior year, misdiagnosed with turf toe. I actually had broken bones in my foot. They thought it was turf toe, so I played through the season getting cortisone shots and all. It was just fought through it. Got to the point where they said I had to get surgery, and I was like, look, I got to hit pro day. If I get surgery, that's gonna knock me out. I try to thug it and just rehab. It didn't happen. So I'm sitting at pro day. Again, we had some dudes on our team. The first time all NFL teams are at Sanford at once, right? It was a big deal, but it was tough. It was extremely tough because that was my identity. That was my little guy, right? Again, hindsight 2020, because it controlled my emotions. It controlled, really the direction in which I was looking to go. And so once that revelation started to become more real in regards of I'm going to need to do something else, it's part of how we all met. I started asking questions like, yo, who are some black folks that be wearing suits? I said it just like that. Like, yo, who are some cats that play sports that be wearing suits and stuff? Because I feel like, and ended up being able to connect with C. Green, Mike, in regards of through the Black Alumni Association. But throughout that same time frame, my second internship experience was at a Fortune 100 company. In the financial industry. So I get into the financial industry. Usually when you get into the industry, you got to have a list of names, like people to be able to call on. So if you're in an investment company, typically it's folks that have investable assets, 50,000, 100,000, 250, $500,000. And then if you're in an insurance based business that could possibly do investments, a lot of it is like, all right, how many households, what's the income, and there's certain insurance products that you'll be able to recommend. So where I was at, you needed at least 200 names. I had 12. I'm like, look, there's only 2 other athletes that graduated. I don't know nobody in Birmingham. Hey, we finna make this shake though, because, I'm seeing the money that they're making. I've never been exposed to any of it. But this is where, and then I'll get into how we launched the practice. Fortune 100 company. I'm at the number 1 office in the country. I'm the only black in the state of Alabama at the time. And for me, it was less about the frustration of being the only black. It was more about, why am I the only one hearing this information? Because these folks that keep coming into this office, they walking out smiling, they giggling. These cats that's managing their money, like there's this level of liberation that we ain't even exposed to the info. Yeah. And so from there, I started to learn more about the business model. Who owns this? Because at the end of the day, the company I was at, I ain't gonna give them no light. The company I was at. Yeah. The community didn't know them. They knew me. And so from there, I found myself explaining myself, like explaining the company to them. And I'm like, man, I shouldn't be doing all of this. So once I learned that ownership really didn't exist, they 1099'd you like you were a business owner, but your book of business was their book of business. They just made you feel good about it. I ended up starting my own practice in 2016. So I made a transition from there, worked with a group of guys, had some really good exposure and authority, right? It was a group of 13, but I was one of the partners. I didn't get no equity, but I had some authority. You know what I'm saying? But it was really good exposure in regards of like the system, infrastructure, accountability, communication, team building, all those things that would naturally occur at a particular business. So I launched IMC Financial Consulting in 2016, literally out of frustration. On one end, it's, what exists that allows people to be able to have a conversation with an expert and not be tied to, or not be worried about them selling them commission on a particular product, nor having to meet a particular quota. Like what business is doing that? And then how are they taking them from one tax bracket to another? And so over time, not really seeing a model to be able to build that off of, I was just going out, just educating, teaching, helping folks. And it was a dialogue with a good brother of mine to where I was helping a client with some financial advice. And he was like, "Coop, man, that's all good. Did they pay for that?" I was like, "No, it's for the community." He was like, "No. You can't pour into anybody if you empty, ultimately." And so I creating the I would say the business model that displayed value add for those that that literally in the lower side of the income, that allows me to provide the service but not bankrupt my household, right? Yeah. And so that model was ultimately, I would say, influenced by A.G. Gasson with that vertical integration. So fast forward, so I got to the story. So what we do, we work with individuals, one-income households, two-income households, to essentially get them from, this is my goals and objectives, this is where I'm looking to get accomplished over this time frame, and we just come in and put numbers to it. Where's your dreams? We finna put numbers to it, hold you accountable on getting that accomplished. Outside of that retail market, now we just corporate terminology, outside of that retail market, our institutional business is more like municipalities. So we built the first financial empowerment blueprint for the city of Birmingham. It's a 41-page document. It's a citywide assessment that allows us to be able to say, these are the organizations doing this work. This is the type of work they're doing. This is the opportunities to strengthen, but also what type of data is that speaks to them being an asset to the city instead of a liability. And it was this type of involvement that I was able to explain to others, and I'm going to share this example, then I'll backpedal. Explain to others that why their resources needed to be deployed in a concentrated way to these individuals in the community. Because if folks are paying their bills on time, Alabama Power ain't sweating. Birmingham Waterworks ain't sweating, right? If they pay their cell phone bill, because, just looking at the way they make money and pulling their balance sheet, there's a line item for utility companies and other companies very similar that's called uncollectible accounts. It's listed as a current asset, and if it's in parentheses, that means there's a deficit. That means you are losing money on products or services that you're already putting out. So we're saying, all right, if we can come into that community and make sure that they can get that aligned and addressed, right? Not only just with the information, but also with the equipment, that's a value add for you. Banks, all right? We talk about the unbanked, underbanked individuals in these households. Some of the issue is more so a historical context on why they are living out what grandma has been saying, right? On why, so some of those habitual poor mindsets, right, that created habits that reflect their situation. How do we communicate that to the banks and how we'll get them bankable, lendable, fast forward, so they see that as a value add? So just as a small example, we work with professional athletes as well. And before we work with the athlete, we say we want to work with your family members first. Who are you helping? All right, mom and pops. All right, little sis. Cool. Before we do anything with you, let's get them straight. And before you say, I'm going to buy mom a house, no. You may not need to just buy her a house. She got good credit. She actually got a great debt to income ratio. Let's go through the process of her being approved for a house so she can appreciate the process, right? And then from there, now they are empowered to be able to take their own situation. Yeah, now you may be able to reduce the liability in a quicker timeline, right, than what we anticipate. But the process is what they need to go through, and we're able to do that for someone that wouldn't be able to pay us because now the athlete is paying us for that. So that's really our model. Who can underwrite the services for people that couldn't pay for it themselves, and how do we position it for an art to reflect a return on investment for that stakeholder that actually either hits their pocket or releases any stress or anxiety, which allows them to be more innovative with what's already in their pocket.
Cool. Real quick, because you glazed over something, man, that I ain't going to let you get away with. So he said he met me and B through the Sanford Black Alumni Association. This guy actually started that. And he really started a connection point back to our university that we didn't quite have, quite frankly. We didn't have any love for it. And so it was through that engagement, through this guy figuring out how to maneuver himself all the way up to the president's office and having regular meetings there to get this predominantly white university to say, yeah, we'll start something for black folks here. And so again, man, that is not a small feat. I don't want you to glaze over that because that set off a series of things, in my opinion, that have contributed to this moment in our collective unity and in individual growth in that regard. I also want to mention this and give a huge shout out to our mayor, Randall Woodfin, our city council, his colleagues, and the Birmingham Board of Education. They have all worked together with IMC to produce and create an opportunity for our students in Birmingham City Schools to have financial literacy delivered to them. And so that is a huge deal, in my opinion. That's a big deal. Hopefully this not only raises up the level of awareness and education around finances for households in our community, but serves as a model on how a government, council, school board, and private business can all work together. All of these are full of black folks. I'm going to go ahead and say it, which is very impressive. So how can we work together to better our community for real? And so, man, I think that's touching at the core of the issue. I certainly respect and appreciate all folks involved and want to go ahead and bring some light to that as well. So thank you, man. That's a good job.
Absolutely, man. Having Coop on the show is a long time coming, man. I mean, there's just been so many things that we've been able to kind of look from the sideline and watch you as you build, right? It's like, you know what? We can simulate that. We could duplicate that. But the ultimate goal was how can we lock in and do something together, man? So just appreciate your story. Appreciate your testimony. Appreciate you coming to the platform to share it with the folks, the Kinfolk community. And you got a lot of juice, man, a lot of jewels that you could share. So you want to tell the folks that's listening how they can get in contact with you? How can they tap in with you, man, if they want to be able to take advantage of your services?
Yeah, of course. You can hit our website, planning, PLANNING, IMC.com. And then on all social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, IMC Financial Consultant, you'll find us. And then if you just search me, I'm going to pop up some way, somehow. You can do just quick little Google search. That actually used to be my line before I met my wife. Like, man, baby girl, Google me. You know what I'm saying? Hey, just Google your boy. But I appreciate Wikipedia. Yeah, well, we got a little something. We got a little search history. You know what I'm saying? In regards to what's gonna pop up. But I appreciate that. Appreciate it, fellas. And also shout out to the city of Birmingham, the mayor, Mayor Woodfin, Board of Education, all the stakeholders involved, city council. It's truly a public-private partnership with this initiative, and so it was just recently announced that we received $1 million of funding to facilitate what C. Green just mentioned, ultimately to be able to embed financial literacy within Birmingham City Schools. But there was something that we were very specific on. Yes, the students need this information so they can be more proactive on their decision making. But we also got to look at the environment that they occupy. What are we providing for the faculty and staff? What are we providing for the parents and caretakers? And then financial literacy, it's been this lollipop type, deliverables that's been going around the country in regards of, hey, we got information. Information is only as good as the person that's delivering it. And if you cannot connect with someone around these key terms and key concepts around finances, not based off what you read, but based off what you experienced. And it's one thing, unfortunately, most people have negative experience with their finances because we weren't prepared in school with it. What class that we had would say, all right, let me tell y'all about capital gains once you sell your home. There was nothing like that, right? And so, it is irresponsible for us to say, hey, teachers, you need to teach this in the classroom, and they have yet to have their own experience with their finances. And so We're providing one-on-one consultations. We're providing financial workshops. One of the dope partnerships is shout out my sister, CEO Tanya Vancourt of Goal Setter. So we partner with Goal Setter with this initiative to be able to provide savings account and investment accounts, and with stock already donated. So their Goal Setter Foundation, they have HP stock, Lyft stock, Twitter stock, Nike stock, Delta stock. So the faculty and staff going to get these stock. These students are going to get these stock. And then as well, partnering with Anthony Anderson. So he filmed the 12 Secrets of Wealth. Everybody sees him on Black-ish. We will be premiering that. Birmingham is a city to jump off the Financial Freedom Project. So we will be premiering that to help facilitate workshops, again, with that whole connection standpoint. So yeah, we're really excited about this initiative because it anything we want to be a part of, it better outlive us. That is the the foundation of it all. And also even going back to the script in regards of that ROI of helping those that are poor, there's pain that comes with that, right? Like there's pain that comes with any type of purpose-driven type of activity. And oftentimes the challenge is not to let what you see around you or your sight or your situation disrupt your momentum towards your vision. And whenever you have an initiative that is outside of yourself, it's very important you create an environment to ensure that you can still operate regardless of the situation that you're in personally. So I'm grateful to be able to see this come to fruition, because ultimately we're going to be able to empower and liberate folks that would never get the attention. Ain't nobody calling them. They make less than $75,000 a year. Yeah. The folks that are calling them got a quarter of a product they're looking to sell. And so we're able to come in and say, nah, we're here to take care of you. We got you. And we have proven methods and ways to be able to connect with them and connect them with professionals that will have data and metrics to be able to show what an ROI will look like over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period. So excited about this project. You'll definitely see us in the classroom. We'll be tapping in with those that's in the ham as well, just like you brothers, to be able to help facilitate and support.
Yeah, that's dope, man. I think this is rooted at the core of what we built this platform for, man. It's all about let's connect, let's conversate, and let's educate. And that's what it's about, bro. So we just appreciate your Coop, man. And we finna get ready to slide into this next segment of the show and kind of get some rapid fire going with the Kinfolk, man. It's a big deal or not for real, right? And just first off the mustard, just the NFL handling of the Tua concussion, man, and get y'all brothers' perspective on it. But I'll jump this thing off. For me, it's a big deal. Because you don't want to compromise your quality of life moving forward. I saw a brief clip of a world-renowned neuropathologist who was the first to discover and publish findings on CTE as it relates to football. And he said, his name is Dr. Bennett Omalu. He said, Tua, you need to cut it. You need to be done. I mean, we all saw it, and it wasn't a good look for the NFL. We had compassion for Tua. So this physician is saying, hey, Tua, you need to do something else, man, because you're already now will likely to suffer from a lifelong of symptoms that's related to that scenario, right? And there's been some, fallout. I think the team doctor, the independent physician, and even the NFL have now shuffled some people in those positions to try to save face. But in my opinion, the damage is done, man. Look, three of us on the show play football. We love the game. It's a violent sport. I mean, but player safety is really what it's about as well, right? And it's got to be tough for Tua. He trained his entire life, to be in this position, to have this platform, but you don't want to compromise the rest of your life. You see what I'm saying? And so I'm sure he's struggling to kind of understand what's next. How do I transition? Maybe it's coaching, man. I can't really speak for him because, I know it's got to be tough. But to me, it's a big deal. He has such a great spirit, man, and I just would like to see him reinvent himself and continue to make a difference in a different lane. So for me, it's a big deal, fellas. What y'all got on that Tua scenario in the NFL handling of the concussions? Y'all jump in?
Yeah, I hop in. I think it's a big deal as well. As you stated, the look that it has for football as a whole. As a former football player, I've never looked at the game and thought it was dangerous. Even though it was a dangerous sport that we always played, I never thought about that up until recently, of seeing that type of hit and thinking, would I want my son getting hit like that? And what would I do if that was my son out there getting hit? And to the point you made, Tua has trained his whole life to be a professional football player. It just goes to some of the conversations that we've had throughout the show of purpose. Maybe that was God's way of opening his eyes to another purpose. There's a bigger calling and bigger purpose for him in life. And maybe this is the situation, as unfortunate as it is, he's looking at it as a loss, but maybe it's a win because there's something so much greater for him to accomplish in his life. And it's going to leave an impact on just more than his fans in football, but people in general. So I definitely think it's a big deal. Certainly has me looking at football like, I think cricket might be all right. We might need to try some cricket around here, man.
Hey, for real.
So I'll leave it on that. Big deal for sure.
That's what's up. What y'all got on the C Green, Coop? What y'all got on the
I'll jump in. I do think it's a big deal, just for all the things that you said. And even Coop said something about his testimony about being misdiagnosed and what kind of impact that had on not only the current decision that he had, but just the future opportunity. And I think our community specifically has been built and designed or really trained to take risk on the front end, regardless of what it costs us later on. You can be a D-boy and get money up front, but that's going to cost you later on. We've done things consistently throughout history with young minds and young talent that doesn't necessarily produce lifelong, health. And so I think this is not just an isolated thing to football. I just think it's a mentality of what am I willing to risk now and cost me later to get money or whatever now. It's hard to speak on it because, again, it's a quarterback, but this thing is happening every game in the NFL from my understanding. And so, these guys are taking this risk. I'm not here to say that the team did or did not do anything the right way, but what I can say is that at some point, the family and the people that really care about you. Now, the NFL and football is a business, and they're making business decisions based on can you play or not. And so we can't just always land on them to make the right decision for the individual. The individual or their circle has to be able to step in and say, you know what, we're out. We're not doing that. And so I do think there has to be a responsibility within that person's family to say that's enough, or we are going to keep going with full understanding. There is a lot more information now as I wrap it up. And so we need to make better decisions based on having more access to more data around how these things go. So it's a big deal. I hope all is well with him.
So.
Yeah, see, and to y'all's point, definitely a big deal. Being a defensive player, it was my job to knock your block off, right? And so, and it was just that, like, it's, I used to, growing up, the word dangerous was in line with once the ball snapped, you got to play dangerous. That was the way you had to move. It was very aggressive, very violent, just for a short amount of time. Unfortunately, with this situation, bro, that's a brain injury, and around the time that when I was at Sanford, those concussion protocol testing was becoming more rampant. I think it was around the time that the physician you mentioned, a lot of his studies were he was doing studies prior to, but they started putting them into practice. And to C's point, specifically at the college and also at the NFL level, the business element will justify decisions that may not be in the best interest of the athlete, and the dream element of the athlete may complement those decisions because they want to get back on the field. Right. And so, unfortunately, as mentioned, there isn't unless you are very clear on what you're going to transition into. It's hard to let go. It's hard. It's hard. It's very hard. And they have yet to even entertain anything that would even even appease their appetite, right? And so just the fact that I read something where he was even like, yo, we were looking at, bro, it's over. It's over. It's a brain injury. Look how your body reacted to when you hit the ground, right? And so because
it wasn't a vicious hit. It really wasn't a vicious hit.
Look, that ultimately showed your head hit the ground, your brain kept moving. That's a problem. You know what I'm saying? And so that in itself, if there is, I am very curious how they try to justify this, knowing how super sensitive they have been in regards to these targeting hits and all of it. There's no justification. Even with them saying this was an unaffiliated physician, again, I don't know all the details. He was affiliated enough to be able to make a decision. And so, like, of course, folks need to be able to deploy some type of responsibility on the situation. But I think the business element has always been the priority, and they're justifying the decisions by, putting the onus on folks on the back end. But I truly hope that this quiet time for him, he will be at peace with making a decision that may not be consistent with playing football. And it's going to be tough. It's going to take some time. It's going to be tough. So definitely blessings to him.
That's what's up, man. Hey, shout out to Chris Rogers too, man. His movement he had going on. I learned something through you guys and kind of getting connected with Chris years ago. You can't physically step on a football or stand on a football. You can't physically stand on a basketball. Try it and see what happens. Right. But if you put some books on the ground, you can stand on them. So regardless of what injury or what you have, you can always stand on your education. And so we'll leave y'all with that and slide, man. This next big deal or not for real. The midterm elections, man. It's a big deal for me. I think it's important to have your voice heard. I think we kind of in society, particularly in our culture, we get accustomed to when we learn about the government process that, hey, we have a president that, you get a chance to vote every 4 years. But the midterms are extremely important because 34 of the 100 Senate seats are up for election. And I'll paint this picture and give you this scenario. You have a CEO of a Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company, but he doesn't get to call the shots without running it through the board of directors first. The CEO is the face of the company. He's the PR person. He gets to kind of deliver the messaging, but he can't call no shots without going through the board of directors. So let's park that and keep that in mind in terms of our president. Our president is the face of the country, nationally and internationally. But you have Senate and Congress that create the bills and pass the bills. So president doesn't get to create these bills and just pass and do whatever he wants to. That's kind of the chain of command, you dig? So in midterms election, you have a chance to elect these Senate seats. And so, for example, if you have a Republican president who's backed by Republicans and they have a Republican agenda, but you got Democrats in these important seats, then that agenda not going to pass through. And so whatever side of the aisle you sit on, whether it's red or blue, left or right, Democrat or Republican, it's important to have your voice heard and not just get fixated on with this every 4 years we have to go vote for the president, because the midterms are just important in my opinion. So it's definitely a big deal for me, fellas. What y'all got on that midterm elections, big deal or not for real?
I can jump in because it's gonna be quick. It's and I'll keep it a buck, Mike. That's the best breakdown I've heard. Like, and I done had a government class. You know what I'm saying? So anything around politics, I've never been proximate to, and again, in all transparency, the first time I voted was voting for Mayor Woodford. Right? It wasn't no president, wasn't anything, because just the way, as many other families have had relationships just with the justice system, you just don't trust it. You don't believe it. You don't, as I've learned more of the roles judges play, learn more of the roles county commission and like seeing the impact on that decision and the need to be able to voice your opinion. I'm like, all right, I need to know something about what these folks got going on. Also the sequence too. Right. But I do think it's definitely a big deal. And, for me, I'm not red or blue. I'm Coop. You know what I'm saying? Because from a fiscal perspective, Republican policy looks really good for business owners, right? Yeah, no doubt. From a community perspective, the Democrats have they're more proximate to community needs, right? And so I've always felt like there is this, Democrats have a little bit more empathy. And again, I'm generalizing, so forgive me. And then Republicans are a little bit more proximate to them taxes.
No doubt. No doubt.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, narratives is what drives the influence and their ability to be able to spread their message. And sometimes it may not align with what they really believe. But I do think it's very important to know to be able to know where your influence and your vote can have an impact. So I truly believe this is a big deal, considering, there may be a presidential shift in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's what's up. What's up? What up, fellas?
Well, I'll jump in. I certainly think it's a big deal as well. And I think most politicians know that it's not a big deal, specifically in our community, to us, because we're more concerned with what's going on in media, TikTok, dance, Kanye, that type of foolishness distracts us from what's really going on. Yeah. Because they understand in the black community it's not a big deal. We still have conversations in the barbershop about why it's important to vote. To the point that you just made, Isaac, the county commissioners, the county judges, same people locking us up. And this election, as you mentioned, Mike, all 435 seats are up in the House of Representatives. With the gerrymandering and some of the laws that they've put in place, it's certainly going to have an impact on our communities and our schools And a lot of things that we don't think about in everyday life, or the average person doesn't think about in everyday life, is certainly going to have an impact. And they're focused on us not paying attention to what's really going on, only looking at the president or the Democrats hadn't did this for me. And I agree with you, Coop. No one party paints the brush for everybody. Because I'm with you on the taxes. I'm with you. There's some things that, from a conservative standpoint, that I agree with. But the big overall picture that I see with the midterms and pretty much all these elections of the shift that they're trying to have specifically on the right. If you look at the Secretary of State seats that are up, a lot of these people are saying we want the power to change the election if we want to. So I think the rights that we have, especially as black people, that we take for granted, they're on the ballot right now. They have already watered down the voting rights. As you saw with the Roe versus Wade with abortion. Now they're talking about marriage equality. Don't think it can't happen to us. And so many people in our community just take it for granted and just blind to it. They're going for the neck, man. As far as I'm talking about Republicans, not all Republicans, but the ones that are in elected seats, and it's evidence out there, they're trying to put their people in place to where if they don't like something, we have all the power to change because everybody else sleep. And once we wake up, situation once it goes that way, how long did it take for us to get voting rights as black people? So if they take it from us, you think you can just go up there and get it back? Now your vote don't even count. So they forever gonna run the election. So I know I just said a lot, but I certainly think it's a big deal for not just the president, as they say, or the senator, but the local, because those local elections are on that same ballot, the school board, the county judge, the district attorney that's locking our people up over nothing. They're on the same election sheet. So certainly a big deal.
Yeah, I'll just be quick. As we even talked about the IMC win, that was locally elected officials. There was nobody in Washington that put a vote towards that or put a dollar towards that. So that shows you what impact local folks have on your local experience, which matters. I think this, man, like we hear a lot of complaining about the results or the outcome. There is a lot of kind of critique on the back end of what happened and this and that. You have to add a contribution to your complaint in order for it to be constructive. So that's constructive criticism. I have a beef, I have something to add to it, and I'm bringing both to the table versus just sitting back watching what everybody else does and commentating with criticism. That's just complaining. So we need to get away from complaining and more to constructive criticism to move this needle forward. I was very fortunate to be in an event the other night, man. They were honoring Richard Shelby. They had Mitch McConnell there. We had a significant black man that led that specific event. Yeah. But long story short, it's amazing how civil everybody is behind closed doors. They actually understand the need to be civil, to engage, to celebrate, to engage with each other, and do it all the time. But when they get out on that stage and they put on the show for the foolish folks, the people that won't read the text, that's when all of this mockery comes up. So again, people in general can't keep going for the okie doke of whatever the show is saying. These folks know how to work together. We've trained them that we don't want them to work together, for that matter. And until we have a different appetite, until we have a different contribution with our complaint, we're still going to find America is going to find themselves in this position. So I think it's a big deal. But again, people need to wake up and really see what the deal is.
Love it. Love the dialogue, fellas. We got one more before we slide out of here, man. Ime Udoka, is it a big deal or not for real? Certainly we don't have all the information, right? I'm not co-signing what he did. I don't want it to be misconstrued or taken the wrong way, but I think it goes along with the narrative and why we actually do the show, just to shed light on it, right? Because guess what? It was a consensual relationship from what they showed us or told us that was leaked, right? But guess what? We don't know who the lady is. We don't know if she was disciplined. We don't know if she was suspended or not because she was protected, right? We know what has been leaked to the media, but to have this guy hung out to dry, and here's why I do have a beef with it, and I struggle with where am I going to land on it, but for me it's a big deal, and I'll tell you why. If what he did was so egregious and went against your club, ball team, organization code, then just fire him. Why suspend him for a year to have him in limbo land only so nobody else could hire him? Come on now, Boston Celtics. Come on, that ain't official. That ain't 100. So for me, it's a big deal, man. That was my brief comments on it, brothers. What y'all got on that Ime Udoka thing? Is it a big deal or not for real?
I think it's not. Mike, I did see something on ESPN last night that said the Celtics said they're not stopping him from getting another job if another team came during this suspension. To me, it's not a big deal. I think one of the things that they've taken focus and taken off of the news, now the MA's on there, is the owner of the Phoenix Suns. That's a big deal, the way he treated his people. And not only him, but the other owners. But right now, all we hear people talking about is MA and that situation. He's suspended. This owner had, years of abuse of how he treated his people. Sexual, verbal, you name it. And check the list. It took them an act to get him to sell his team. They should be focusing on. That's a bigger deal to me than MA because he slept with somebody. And I know it's more details that we don't know about. Now, if he physically abused somebody or took something, absolutely he should pay for that. But a consensual relationship, as they put it out there, that's not a big deal to me compared to some of the other stuff, specifically the owners are doing and the way that they treat and their thoughts about the players that play for them in the organization.
Hey, man, that's what we do. We bust it down and chop it up, bro. I mean, that's diversity of thought. So, see, Coop, what y'all got on that, man? Big deal or not for real?
I'll jump in so C could close this up. It started out as not for real when I first saw the news, but as it evolved in regards of who was being reprimanded and all in the secrecy around this partner, it turned into a big deal because it really just highlighted the choice of focus, which was unfortunate with his situation. And I'm a pull a G Reed on this because I was like, then what happened with Brett Favre's situation? We just all forgot about that, right? Like even going back to some of this, some of the issues there. But it's an unfortunate situation. Of course, any type of relationship outside of the one in which you're in is not one in which we're supporting. I think the assessment is on a fair. We'll just say a fair reprimand of all the parties involved. And the news has not allowed that assessment to be comprehensive as it should be. And so I feel like I'm a politician. I ain't even answer your question. So
Hey, man, listen, I got it on not for real for the simple standpoint of what it means to the Celtics and that kind of thing. They see him as an asset. So in that statement, they're saying, if you want to come get him, you got to pay us for him, basically. Yeah. And so, again, there is too much inconsistency there. What I would say is the big deal is that we as brothers, as men, need to know that once we ascend to powerful positions, you don't have that same grace around any mistake that you may make. And so our decision making has to be a lot more thoughtful and clear as it relates to specifically this lane. It's a lot of people getting trapped up and jammed up with women. Hey, man, I know how important they are to my, how important my wife is to my personal peace and space. Like, we need that medicine. But again, how can we be disciplined? How can we be effective leaders? How can we show and be the example? And that's where I do lean in to say, hey, man, you got to make a better decision in that moment, because there is not this track record of grace as it relates to if black men make this decision in a position of power. Y'all forget we have a president. We had a former president, Trump, who had multiple women come out about sexual abuse, paying them off, all these different things that go against
grab them by the stuff.
Our leaders are supposed to be doing, and not once was he suspended or reprimanded for that. So again, at the highest level, there is no accountability there. But at any level that our men or black men are being prosecuted because of our platform, not because of the thing, that is not what it's about. They want to strip us of wealth, platform, and resources to make the impact. So that's the only big deal part of it for me, fellas.
Yeah. Hey, listen, man, that was a hard episode, bro. If y'all felt it like I felt it, man, we want to hear from you. Tap in with us. Let us know what you like, what you didn't like. But more importantly, tell us what you want us to bust down on the next show. You dig? And let's go ahead and keep it official, man.
Mike, before you slide, man, shout out to the people in Florida, man. Prayers and blessings for all the people that's impacted by Hurricane Ian. I know it's a lot of people whose life has dramatically changed, probably forever, behind that story.
doubt.
So definitely prayers up for all the people in Florida impacted. Florida, Puerto Rico, and
South
Cuba.
Carolina, just all
South
of them.
Carolina. Yeah, everybody impacted by Hurricane Ian.
No doubt.
And,
No doubt. Good
and
call
if you
out.
don't have your green beans, if you living on the coast right now and ain't got no water in your garage or no canned green beans, you need to get your stuff together.
No
Leave it on
doubt.
that,
Good
too.
call out, G Reed. Good call out. Just one more shout out to Coop, man. We appreciate you coming to the platform, brother, coming through, blessing the folks with those bars, man. You came through with your mind right. You know, and if you're digging what Coop brought to the platform, man, let us know. We can get some paperwork together for him, man. Maybe have him come back to the show. You dig what I'm saying? Right now, we out here, man. Till next time, more love and less hate. Gone.